You're listening to Eleanor and Alasdair Read That.
This is the pilot episode of a new podcast where two red-headed comedians revisit classic kids' books and ask the big questions.
Is it good?
Yeah, is it good?
Is it okay?
Did you like it?
Does it hold up?
Is it still good?
Would you read it to a child now?
Would a child read it to you?
Is it cancelled?
These are just questions.
I'm Eleanor Morton.
I'm Alistair Beckett-King.
And our first episode is The Hobbit.
By J.R.R. Tolkien.
Should we just get into it?
Let's just get into it.
Okay. Well, your neighbours stopped drilling, I think.
It was so loud. I feel like they were drilling immediately underneath the floor.
I've had that before where people have been doing DIY or whatever when I'm recording and I'm like, I can't go downstairs and be like, hi, I'm actually doing a podcast. It's about my favourite soup and it's very important and could you just be quiet?
Hi, it's your neighbour, media personality Eleanor Morton, and...
I've got a silly job.
You're actually being very, very noisy on a Sunday afternoon, which is very unreasonable because I'm at work.
Yes, I'm actually at work. I work... People think comedians work less. We actually work more.
Yes, it's very hard to get up around 11:30 and then maybe do a podcast in the afternoon.
Yeah.
So if you could just shut up.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We've tried to do this podcast for literal years now.
What an epic quest trying to record a podcast has been for us.
It really has been. So the idea behind this is that we're going to look back at children's literature of our childhoods and other childhoods, not our childhoods, and just have a look at it and see, does it hold up? Is it good?
Are we going to cast a critical eye?
Are we going to cast a bit of a critical eye?
One critical eye.
And a nostalgic eye.
And a nostalgic eye.
Yes, like a magic eye puzzle of books for children.
Well, that makes perfect sense.
And the first book we've chosen is The Hobbit, which you did not read as a child.
Well, I thought I had read The Hobbit, but having now read The Hobbit, I haven't read The Hobbit.
You didn't read The Hobbit, yeah.
I don't think I knew how it ended, so I read The Hobbit for the first time. To the shock of everyone I told that to, not one of them believed that I had not read The Hobbit.
It's very on brand for you, that's probably why I suggested it.
The listener may not be able to see, I have a vaguely wizardy mane.
I'd call it that, yeah.
Yeah, a somewhat Middle-earthy appearance.
And you're not averse to a waistcoat?
I'll wear a waistcoat and perhaps a baggy-sleeved white shirt now and again.
Yes. But no pipe.
No, I don't smoke a pipe.
No.
Or ride around on a little pony.
That's because you can't get them in London.
I have ridden around on a little pony on Blackpool Beach.
Oh.
And it farted the whole time.
Did it?
Yeah. I think that was how it was powering the movement. Very embarrassing.
I've only been horse riding once, and obviously I was picturing myself as a proper horse girl, really being cool, but the horse was farting the whole time, and it did take away from...
Horses all farting the whole time, and they just edited it out of the film, so we don't know about it.
When they say horsepower, they mean fart power.
Wow.
Did you read The Hobbit at Christmas? Is that when you read it?
Yes, I read it at Christmas.
And did that help it feel atmospheric?
I was annoyed because I was ready to not like it.
Sure.
You know, I regard myself as not a huge fan of Tolkien.
No.
And gosh darn it, it's pretty good. It's quite a good book.
Nice.
I'm not happy about that, but it's good.
I agree. I actually think, now, okay, this is my turn. I haven't read Lord of the Rings. Yeah, I like the Lord of the Rings as a film series, and I like The Hobbit as a book. And the other way rounds are not for me. Yeah,
I agree. I enjoy the Lord of the Rings films, and I hate the Hobbit films.
I've watched a 4-hour fan cut of the Hobbit films, and there is the Hobbit is in there.
There is a Hobbit in the films, yeah.
It's in the 6 hours, 7 hours worth of film is one 4-hour Hobbit film.
Oh, I see what you mean. I thought you meant that there was a Hobbit in the films. It's like, yeah, he's called Bilbo. He's the main character.
Oh, I missed him the first time.
They should, but there are so many other characters. They should call it a Hobbit rather than the Hobbit.
Yes, a Hobbit and a bunch of dwarves who are...
By weight, it should be called the dwarves.
It should be, really, like, measurement-wise. Also, just before we did this, the reason I was slightly late is because I was having a coffee with James Nakase. Have you ever met James?
I don't know if I have.
I always say his name wrong. He is a Kiwi comedian, very funny guy. He was an orc in Lord of the Rings.
Wow.
He was an extra, and I think one of the men of Gondor.
That's very cool, but my impression is that pretty much everyone in New Zealand was in the film at some point.
Yeah.
I don't mean to take anything away from him.
No, you are completely right. He said, because it was in Wellington, and he said everyone in Wellington basically did something on the film. So you didn't even need to explain to them why you were like half covered in latex. They'd be like, oh yeah, I assume you've been in the Lord of the Rings.
I guess it would be like the Second World War, and basically, even if you're not out there doing it. You're at home,
On
on the home front.
The home front of the Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, just knitting chainmail or something.
Yeah, well, he was saying actually the chainmail is much more authentic and expensive in Lord of the Rings, and it was therefore much heavier, and they basically had to stand around in it all day, and you'd kind of come home like completely drained because you'd basically been carrying weights around like 12 hours. Yeah. So if you want to get ripped, I think you should go.
And I do.
You're always talking about it.
It's really what I want to achieve from this podcast, ideally. You want to look back at kids' books, whereas I'm looking for the secrets of macho fitness regimes.
We just looked at 2 different podcast demographics and we thought we can cover both.
Yeah, let's bring it together.
So my memories of The Hobbit, because I read it at quite a young age, because I think I read my dad's original copy from the 60s, and there was a play of it on at the Edinburgh Playhouse when I was like, I want to say 8 or 9. And I remember that making a big impression.
Did they actually have 13 dwarves for the play?
I think they were...
Or did they shrink the number?
No, I think it was 13.
Really?
I think you can't do that, can you? Who would you get rid of? Oin?
Yes, I've written it down here. Tell me one fact about Oin or he's out.
Oh, fuck.
You can't have that he's the brother of Gloin. Or the uncle of Gimli.
He's actually one of the oldest members of the party and finds it difficult to hear without the aid of his ear trumpet.
Are you Googling?
No, this is so
Really?
funny. I actually don't know. That could just be in the film. I don't remember him having an ear trumpet in the book, but I could be wrong.
I did write down the names. So many memorable characters. Nori. Who could forget... Biffa. Am I saying it wrong?
I think it's Biffa, yeah.
It sounds like it. Is that not a cigarette?
Bifer.
Is that not a marijuana cigarette, a Biffa?
I mean, would either of us know that?
I don't know.
I think you're asking the wrong podcast.
Maybe someone could tell us at some point.
Yeah, someone will.
We've got Thorin and Balin, well characterised. We know who they are. Dwalin, Fili, Kili, Dori, Nori, Ori, Oin, Gloin, Biffa.
Yep.
Bofa and Bomber.
Okay, here's who I know from the book and could characterise. Balin, old one.
Yeah.
Thorin, leader.
Boss.
Killy and Philly, fun comic relief guys.
Hot hobbits.
Not in the book, but in the film they're hot.
Tolkien doesn't mention how hot they are, but then when you see them, you're like, these guys are pretty hot.
It is funny how that was a choice they made. Like, we should make 2 of the dwarves hot.
I think it's reasonable.
It's not something anyone was asking for. Yeah, and then Bomber, and he is the fat one because his name is Fat and they talk about him being fat. That's his whole thing.
The weirdest thing about that is there's a recurring jokes about how fast and slow he is.
Yes.
Like the narrator, Tolkien, J.R. Are you sure there are enough dwarves in this book, Tolkien? Gets a lot of jokes about how fat and slow he is. And then he gets poisoned because of how fat and slow he is. And you think he's going to die and it gets quite serious, but then he doesn't die. And the book goes straight back to making fun of him for being fat.
Yeah, well...
I thought we were going to learn a lesson about that, and we absolutely don't.
That's the true mark of friendship.
We're just like, who's this slow fatso? The guy who nearly died yesterday.
Well, that's how you know that they really love him, because they relentlessly bully him. And that is, I'm pretty confident, how I made all my friends.
Shall we talk about what has aged well in the book?
Yeah.
Because there's a lot, actually. I'm annoyed at how much of it has aged well.
Here's a question. What were you picturing before you read it, and then what was different?
I really like adventure stories.
Yeah.
You know, I read plenty of 19th and early 20th century rollicking fun tales.
Absolutely.
And they are all extremely offensive.
Yes.
As a genre, adventure has aged quite poorly.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, specifically all the stuff set in all the colonies, all the many, many colonies.
Yeah, there's loads of adventuring around and meeting other less good cultures and probably, I don't know, teaching someone to speak English and be a Christian and then having an adventure that involves a magic skull.
Sure.
I think I probably expected it to read more dated than it does.
You see, what he's done here is there's only white people in it, so already that's made that slightly easier. You can't be offensive to people if you don't put them in your book.
Oh, there's no women in it either, so he's dodged a bullet there.
Well, I was going to say yes, but I can see the genesis of a lot of later adventure stories from this. I mean, even the opening line is it's become a classic, and I almost think that when you read this, you expect things that came before it to be very similar, but he's kind of recreated his own medieval style fairy tale and made everyone think that that's how it's always been in a way.
Yeah, it's clearly the beginning of, well, not necessarily an entire genre, but like nearly.
Yeah,
Almost.
the germination of where that would go.
There are lots of seeds, and there's a surprising amount of foresight.
Yeah.
Like, the inciting incident is an unexpected party, and as millennials, what could be more nightmarish?
Oh my God. I am not even kidding. That is my worst nightmare. 13 dwarves turning up for an unexpected party. I would have a panic attack, okay? I'd be in that wine cellar, breathing into a paper bag.
I'd certainly be standing in the kitchen.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be in the main area of the party.
Yeah. I mean, what would they even eat? I don't have a storehouse of cheeses and wines. But, I mean, as a child, I think I got a bit obsessed with Hobbit core, with the idea of living in a little house in a hill with a round door. Oh, that's the dream.
I'm quite tall, so I don't know why I want a circular door, because it's just going to cause problems, but I do.
You'd do the bang your head like Gandalf thing.
All the time.
And I'd laugh at you because I'm tiny.
As you scurry around in and out of little gaps.
And your ankles.
Stop it. Get away from me.
A ginger-only remake of The Hobbit.
Yeah, let's make The Hobbit slightly more white. I think that's what the Lord of the Rings franchise needs.
Yeah. I think it's the perfect length. There's little incidents, there's little separate bits. They're in the forest, they've got the spiders, they've got the elves. And it's very readable for young people without being too simple. And I just love it. I really love it.
I think you're right. And it's different to like a modern adventure story would have arcs and clear character goals that are established from the start, rather than just Bilbo's general goal, which is to be a hobbit as much as possible.
Yes, which I like.
Yeah, which is cool. I don't think picaresque is exactly the right word. He's not exactly a rascal, but it is highly episodic.
Yes.
The chapters are all like a neat little fairy tale. It's the perfect length for reading before bed.
Exactly, per chapter, yeah.
It is exactly the kind of book it's supposed to be, a book you can read to a child, and each little element of the story tells its own tale. I like the fact that you can just dip your hand into a troll's hole and pull out a magic sword, which is like a famous sword that's going to be important later, that just happened to be there.
Yeah, and we don't need to go back and figure out why it's there.
It doesn't matter why it's there.
No.
It just turns up when it's needed. Characters just turn up when they're needed.
Yeah.
Because it's a story, and it functions like a fairy tale. Credit where it's due. He knows how these stories fit together.
And I also think it's British in the best sense, in that it's about basically the Hobbit equivalent of an accounts manager going on an adventure. He's a very, he's a passive-aggressive, awkward man who doesn't want to leave his house, and he's forced into this adventure. And I just think many British people can relate to not really wanting to go outside. but then learning, actually, it's good for you to go outside sometimes, and it's good for you to meet new people and experience scary things.
And there's a sense that he's lost the adventurous spirit he had when he was a kid.
Yes, and his family had. Which
Gandalf remembers.
Yes.
It's also surprisingly funny.
It is funny.
It's got jokes in it.
Yeah.
I didn't know it was going to have jokes in it.
It's much more... from what I've read of Lord of the Rings, it's just more laid back. I think he's having fun writing it,
One thing that really struck me is the way it makes reference to our world. Like it says someone shrieks like the whistle of an engine coming out of a tunnel. So it's not a simile that belongs to Middle-earth.
Yeah.
Which I kind of think you probably wouldn't do now if you were writing
that's a good point.
Fantasy fiction now. But I suppose the conventions that he's establishing weren't established.
I mean, obviously I haven't read a lot of modern children's books, but I feel like we've sort of lost that slightly cheeky, maybe Lemony Snicket had it, but that sort of narrator as a personality vibe that I think She Who Must Not Be Named sort of had a bit of. In book one of Harry Potter, there was this, the first sentence is, Mr. and Mrs. Dursley were perfectly normal people, thank you very much. And it's, I don't know, there's a tone there that's fun and is sort of a bit cheeky that I think they lose over the series. That this book has. I think he read this to his children, or he wrote it for his children, and you can tell that there's that level of sort of affection in there that just elevates this kind of stuff.
My favourite joke is the bit about one of Bilbo's ancestors, Bullroarer.
Yep.
He charged the ranks of the goblins of Mount Graham in the Battle of the Green Fields and knocked their king Golfimbull's head clean off with a wooden club. It sailed 100 yards through the air and went down a rabbit hole. And in this way, the battle was won and the game of golf was invented at the same moment.
That's fine.
Now, he gives the joke away a little bit by calling the guy Golfimbull.
Yes.
There's more to Terry Pratchett than a Tolkien spoof.
Absolutely.
But the seed of plenty of humorous fantasy writing is there.
When Billy Boyd was cast, everyone was like, well, you can't have one Hobbit who's Scottish and everyone else from the West Country. And they used this story to justify it because his ancestor was the same ancestor. They said, well, his ancestor invented golf, so we're allowed a Scottish Hobbit, which I like.
Oh, yeah, golf Scottish, yeah.
I like that he's allowed to be Scottish, and they don't question why there's no other Scottish hobbits.
It had never occurred to me that he's the only Scottish hobbit.
I think it doesn't occur to a lot of people.
In the films, isn't Billy Connolly one of the... No, he's a dwarf. Never mind.
I actually met one of the dwarves from The Hobbit, Graham McTavish, who was Dwalin, because he lives in New Zealand, and I interviewed him for a book he's written with his Outlander co-star Sam Heughan. He told me a bit about being in the film and all the prosthetics. If you Google Dwalin, he's got...
Are they wearing prosthetics in that film?
None of the Scottish actors are, but everyone else.
Ken Stott, they actually had to make him look more normal.
I'm not being funny. I love Ken Stott, but he already looks very fairy tale. Is that the right word? I don't know.
He's a horrible Scottish goblin face.
I love Ken Stott.
He's great.
I love him as Rebus, but as a sort of lady killer character who's always playing the field, it's a bit of a stretch.
Yeah.
John Hannah used to be Rebus.
Yes.
I can see that.
Oh, yeah, I fancy John Hannah.
But then Rebus turns into Ken Stott.
That's what happens to all Scottish men eventually. And it might happen to you, yeah. Don't know if you're Scottish enough to turn into Ken Stott, but...
I think I'm on the cusp of Stott at this point. Not that I was ever John Hannah.
You either turn into him or Gaza. Is Gaza from Newcastle?
He's from the northeast, yeah.
Yeah, so you've got two options.
Choose, Western man.
Yeah, Graham McTavish was saying Dwalin in the films, he's got these great big muscly arms that are sort of out of his shirt sleeves. He doesn't have sleeves. And apparently they're latex, fake arms, which is quite funny.
Fake arms?
Fake arms over his real arms. Don't know how I'd feel if I came along and they were like, we're going to have to give you fake arms, Eleanor.
We're going to have to buff this up quite a lot.
Yeah. What has aged badly?
There's the idea that you sort of inherit traits from your family. I suppose I don't know if that's still quite popular with internet racists and tech billionaires.
It is, yeah. Do you mean in the sense of...
the adventurous wanderlust of the Tooks comes down from Belladonna Took into Bilbo's lineage. It's maybe just a little bit more concerned with lineage than we progressive wokes who want to tear down the family and hate goodness and beauty would like.
Yes, spoiler alert, we are wokes, unfortunately, so... Switch off now.
I think that might have been obvious when you started talking about Harry Potter before.
I don't think so, no.
I haven't actually heard of Harry Potter, so...
I'm so woke I haven't even heard of Harry Potter. And also, I think we touched on this earlier, there are no women in it.
We keep mentioning Belladonna Took, but she's dead.
She's just mentioned.
She's mentioned several times.
And that's why in the films they invent Toriel, a lady elf, to fall in love with a hot dwarf, because that's what you need women to do in films, obviously.
Yeah.
I think as a child, because obviously so much stuff didn't have women in it, you didn't really notice as a girl. I'm not saying it was right, but I can't say I was bothered because like it was sort of a story about like a bunch of middle-aged blokes. So I was like, well, yeah, of course there's no women in this.
Yeah, Eleanor, can't the blokes have something? Won't you leave us with anything?
Basically, like a stag do.
It's a stag do that lasts a year and was really badly planned.
Yeah, with multiple injuries and near-death experiences.
Mm.
Yeah, I mean, obviously The Lord of the Rings is not super stuffed full of ladies, although I think the ladies it does have are good ladies, I will say. As far as not being, not aging well, I think that sometimes it's nicer not to have any women than to have them really wrong and bad.
Yeah, so let's get rid of the bad women, is that what you're saying?
All women are bad, obviously, so get rid of all of them. But
get rid of all women.
Sometimes it's just easier to not think about those things than have to look at them and go, oh, it's awkward the way that woman's been written. Oh. So I guess I'm covering my eyes with this one.
In a weird way, it's not only Tolkien where I feel this. There's a bit with C.S. Lewis and other writers who were actually in a war.
Oh, yeah.
I can't help but think that sort of later writers writing about big fantasy battles, it feels like there's a slightly different tone. What I expected from this was, sort of big, epic heroism and boldly smiting evil.
Yeah.
And it's way more concerned with male friendships and camaraderie and mutual respect than it is with heroism or sort of macho smashings.
Well, I don't know how much you know about this, but Tolkien was very much like, I hate allegories, I don't do allegories, allegories are awful, no allegories for me. And it's very hard to be like, okay, sure, but you kind of might have been a teeny bit influenced by the two massive wars that happened in your lifetime.
Tolkien's like, no.
Completely
Didn't
different.
go in the book, did not influence me at all.
Nothing to do with it.
He may not be doing an allegory, but there are themes related to war and a sense of what's worth fighting for, which is mostly having a nice sit down.
It basically is like having a nice sit down and a beer with your friends, which I think is a good thing, actually. So I'm for it. But, I don't think he went into it like, I'm going to write a story and Bilbo equals Tommy Atkins and Thorin is General Haig. I mean, we've talked before about the Narnia series and, if you want to talk about allegory, that certainly bangs an anvil right down. And once I saw the allegory there, it was very hard to unsee that the lion was Jesus. But with this, I think it's a bit more subtle.
Yeah, it probably does reflect, I guess, a vaguely conservative kind of anti-capitalism.
Yeah.
But it's not a manifesto.
Well, this is interesting because it says on this Wikipedia page, yes, I'm looking at Wikipedia, okay, deal with it. It says that it was slightly influenced by the works of William Morris, which is, I don't know how, but that's very interesting.
He's left-wing.
Yeah.
He's one of ours. He's one of the wokes. He did woke wallpaper.
He did do woke wallpaper. I've got some. That's how woke I am.
Of course you do.
Of course I do. But his whole thing was, pushing against industrialization and going back to simple living and things, obviously stuff only middle-class people can do in this system. But I can see it. In the stories.
It's appealing.
Oh, yeah.
The charm of Bag End and of the Shire.
You can picture Bag End being decorated purely with William Morris, some lovely wallpaper in there. But it's not a completely bloodless fairy tale because people do die in this book, which I sort of forgot.
The hot dwarves die.
The hot dwarves die.
Both of them.
I know.
Both of the hotties.
Well,
dead.
You're not allowed to live if you're a hot dwarf.
They were too beautiful to live.
Yeah, they were too beautiful for this Earth.
And Middle Earth.
Too hot for all Earths. Space dwarves. And Thorin dies.
Oh yeah, Thorin died. I'll be honest. I have seen the films, and I thought I had read it as a child. I hadn't.
Yeah.
I could do without the siege and the fight at the end. Bilbo gets knocked out, and I'm like, yeah, knock me out and wake me up when this bit's over.
I am really sad to think that you saw those films before you read the book. That is really sad. There's some things where it doesn't really matter, but that is tragic.
Yeah, I mean, the book is slightly shorter.
It
takes less time to read the book than it does to watch the films.
The last film is about 20 pages of the book, I think, stretched into 2.5 hours. It's incredible. And they add a whole bunch of stuff. Obviously, the love triangle.
Between the mayor of Lake Town and... I can't remember who's involved in that love
Stephen
triangle.
Fry. No, not Stephen
Fry.
That was a part of the book as a child. I was sort of slightly blurred into a sort of oh, it's the end now. Sort of lost interest.
Yeah. Just
as
wrap
it got
it up.
battle-y. I'm not very good at reading about battles.
I think he has to take some responsibility. I just don't think it's that interesting. Compared to being lost in the underground tunnels with Gollum and compared to the woods with the spiders and the elf place with the barrels. Okay, there is a dragon. They do kill a dragon.
Yeah, well, that's a fun bit where they find the entrance to the lair and then he's having the riddle battle.
Yeah, when Bilbo goes down and talks to the dragon. Great, very tense.
Yeah.
I mean, essentially, it's a heist. That's what I didn't realise.
Oh,
plot-wise,
nice.
the whole thing is a heist.
I like that.
But what's frustrating about it is they arrive at the Dragon's Mountain, the Lonely Mountain, and then it's revealed that the dwarves have no plan at all for how to get the gold back from the dragon.
Yeah, they're not good.
At that point, they've been on their quest for a full year, I think.
Yes.
And they haven't at any point even discussed.
It's very much literally we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. I also and I'm not sure if it's ever explained why they need Bilbo to do the actual stealing. Is it because he's smaller than them? Is that why?
I think it's Gandalf's wisdom.
Right.
I think they know they need someone's help, and Gandalf, in his prophetic, wizardly way, realizes that this seemingly ordinary hobbit is actually the key to, doing a whole load of epic stuff, helping them out, getting all that gold back.
I guess it's a story about repatriation.
Oh, no.
Oh my God, yes. No, not what do I mean? Like giving...
What do you mean? Because repatriation's not that cool.
I don't mean repatriation. It's a story about...
Send those dwarves back to that mountain where they come from.
No, what's the word for when the British Museum should give all its stuff back?
Oh, that's also repatriation, yeah.
That's what I meant. Yeah. It's
but of things, not people.
Yes, of treasures that belong to a certain people. It's about them getting those back.
Fair enough.
Do you want to play the dwarf game?
What's the dwarf game?
The dwarf game, shag, marry, kill 13 dwarves.
Yeah. Shag, marry, kill.
Okay.
Or shag, marry, killy, if you prefer the pun.
Shag, killy, kill, filly. No.
Why would you kill Philly? One of the hot ones.
He is hot. He is hot. He is so not like a dwarf is meant to look. It's very funny. I mean, Thorin as well, actually looking at Thorin, he's obviously also a hot dwarf.
I like Balin. I do like Balin.
I like Balin. Oh, yes, I like Balin.
He's wise. He's wiser than Thorin. He doesn't get all wrapped up in the gold.
I think he's Thorin's uncle, and then Thorin is Killian Philly's uncle.
Right.
Should we use this wired flowchart to see if we can get to whichever dwarf you're thinking of?
Oh, yeah, yes, absolutely.
Okay, are you thinking of a dwarf?
I am.
Is the beard grey?
No.
Is he bald?
Yes.
Is it Dwarlen?
Yes.
Wow, there you go. All right, let me think of a dwarf. Okay, I'm thinking of a dwarf.
Is the beard grey?
No.
Is he bald?
No.
You've deviated already from my
Yep.
choice. Does he have a donut-shaped beard extremity?
No.
No. Does he have a hat with ears?
No.
Does he look like Gimli?
No.
That's Gloin out. Gimli, son of Gloin, the only thing I remember about Gloin.
Yep.
Does he appear to be in charge and have a large fur coat?
No.
Is his hair red-brown?
No.
Is it Killy?
Yes, it's Killy.
Yes,
oh my
it's
God,
hot
it
Killy.
worked.
It works.
It does work. That's fun. That's a lot of fun. We were fun in lockdown, you can tell.
Do you want to pass judgment on the book? Do you want to pass a verdict?
Yes, let's pass a verdict on the book.
Is it hot like Philly and Killy? Or is it not like all the other characters?
All the other people.
Like literally everyone else?
I think it's hot.
Yeah, I think it's...
Yeah?
I'm furious at myself because this is exactly what everyone thinks of me. Oh, Alasdair, living in a tree house, reading your fantasy novels.
We've established you're too tall for that, so...
Yeah, I wouldn't need to be in a tree house. My head is already that high.
I could live in a hobbit hole, though.
You could live in a hobbit hole.
Very easily. I think it's hot. And here's the second question for that. Would you read it to your hypothetical child, Alasdair, who for this episode is called...
For this episode, I'm going to call him Stanton.
Stanton. Nice.
Stanton. Sort of preppy little... You know, I just feel like my kid would probably be infuriatingly middle class.
I was going to say, is he American? He sounds American.
Yeah, I see him as being
Stanton
a
Beckett
kind
kid.
of waspy little kid with a pocket square, maybe a cravat.
Yeah.
When I think about how middle class I am compared to my dad, if you and my dad compared to his dad, if you continue that trajectory...
Because Tolkien would, because he likes inherited traits.
He does like inherited traits.
You just get more middle class with each generation.
This kid's going to be awful.
And are you reading The Hobbit to little Stanton?
I would, to try and teach him a lesson about, hardship and friendship, endurance and achieving your goals. But I don't think.
Yeah.
I'm just going to get him off any crimes he's accused of.
Absolutely, yeah. 100%.
By having a word with the judge. So I don't think it's going to help. Come on, you're not going to ruin his life just for whatever crime he has committed. Come on.
Just for all the murders he's done.
Come on. He's a young 32-year-old. Give him a break.
He's on the rowing team.
Look at his pocket square.
I think my hypothetical child, who I'm calling...
What are you calling your hypothetical child?
Clements.
Clements?
I know.
We've alienated so many listeners already.
I actually really like Clements.
It's a good name.
Clements is more normal than your child.
It suggests moderation.
Yeah, I would read it to Clements, and I would really enjoy all the acting I'd get to do.
Yeah, the funny voices.
I'd do all the voices.
Would you do 13 different accents for the dwarves?
Yes. Even though they're all from the same place.
Most of them don't say anything.
Most of them are Scottish, and I'm very interested in the way that Scottish people ended up being associated with dwarves. I don't hate it. I'm just like, what's the story there,
It feels a little bit like the stereotype that Scottish people are quite stingy and the stereotype that dwarves are obsessed with gold.
Yes,
It
exactly.
feels like something's happening there.
And that we're all hairy and slightly uncouth, and we'll come around to your house and eat all your food, which I have done, but... But I would read it. I would probably point out to Clements, now, there's no women in this, but that doesn't mean it's bad. It just means maybe next time we should have some women in it. Yeah, so that's what I'd do. So yeah, I rate it, I think. And I think if you want more of the same, I don't know if you've read his Letters from Father Christmas.
No.
Oh, so this is great. This is very wholesome. So he was, he had 4 children, I think, and they were very close.
They were called Dory and Nori.
Dory, Ori, Nori, Glory, Fory, Mori, and Tory, and that one wasn't as good. But no, he would write them letters every Christmas, pretending to be Father Christmas, and he would illustrate them. And there was a whole sort of world that went with that. There was a polar bear character and an elf character, and all these sort of things they get up to together. And anyway, you can buy them now in a collection, and it's just very sweet because
Oh, how lovely!
he builds this very lovely world, and you can tell he genuinely cares. Not that we need to judge books on their authors, but I think out of many, many authors from that time, I'd be absolutely happy to meet him, which is massive praise.
It is massive praise, because literally every other children's author is awful.
Awful, awful.
Thanks for listening to Eleanor and Alasdair Read That.
Brackets pilot episode.
Prologue.
If you'd like to hear more, please subscribe, rate, review, and or recommend us to a friend.
And we'll be back in the new year with Series 1 of Eleanor and Alasdair Read That.
And at the end of the series, we will reveal which one of us is actually Scottish.
Can I take 5 seconds to blow my nose? Otherwise, I'm
Yes,
gonna...
of course.
Thank you so much. Hang on.
Remember to edit it down to just these bits.
Hello, I'm back. Hi.
I have to say that was the best off-mic, incredibly loud nose blow
Did
I've
you
ever
hear
heard.
that?
Yeah.
That was
yes, that was louder
that was
than the
like-
normal talking you're doing.
That was 2 rooms away.